If you've ever had a team of Russians put a bounty on your head and then take photos with your lifeless body after all of your teammates died and you decided to rush their berm and into their mounted RPK, hit that sub button and keep watching.
Get up here now!
We got a shield launch! I just got back from my first Milsim West event and it was incredible. But Milsim West is not an airsoft event. It's a 40-hour field training exercise where airsoft guns are used while you take care of yourself, kill bad guys, protect good guys, and seize vital resources. And it's different from other Milsim events in that it is highly structured, highly strategic, and where individuals fall within a designated chain of command are separated by platoons, squads, and teams, and are given specific orders that coordinate in some way to what every other squad and platoon is doing. One of the cool parts about a Milsim West event is that you don't get a break. You're in the field for 40 hours straight, if not a little bit more. There's no going back to your car, there's no going back to the parking lot, there's no going back to your campsite. What you bring with you is what you live with for 40 hours straight, regardless of the weather conditions or anything else. Now, with that being said, I'm gonna walk you through everything that I brought to make my first Milsim West experience a good one. I didn't just survive in the field, I thrived, I had a great time. And also kind of what you can expect and why you should do it and some of the takeaways that I got out of the entire experience. So before I go over this pack, there's one thing you should know. When you sign up for one of these events, you'll get an email with a massive packing list of things you absolutely have to bring and things they recommend bringing. I took everything that they said that you have to bring and almost nothing of what they said you could bring. I kept it pretty light and pretty minimal because I knew that we weren't going to be out in the woods a lot at this particular AO. This event was held at the Muscatatuk Urban Training Center, which is a premier global training center for special operations and high-level law enforcement. It's very urban. There's not a lot of stuff to do in the woods, though we did trek into there. But being the fact that there were buildings everywhere, we knew that we were going to be pretty well living out of buildings. So I scaled this pack back quite a bit from what I would normally take out into the woods, out into the field, living out in the elements. So just because you see this video and you see the way that I have my stuff set up, don't take it as gospel. It'll depend on the event that you go to. So with that being said, I had to live out of this for 40 hours. The total weight on this thing is about 26 pounds with everything in it. I didn't go big, I didn't go minimal. I went with what I felt like taking. So first things first, whenever I got there, I actually deleted my sleeping pad. I sleep on floors all the time anyway. I wasn't super concerned with keeping off the ground, so I deleted this off the pack and didn't worry about it. Normally, it would live on there. This is an Everly stock Fact Track, by the way. It's actually Josh's. I borrowed it for the event, but it's one of the mid-sized bags. It's not the largest, not the smallest, just a good basic ruck. So let's go over what I have in there. Guys, if you're getting into Milsim or you just need some good gear, you should check out Venture Surplus. They make content like this possible, and they're also a bunch of cool dudes. One of the worst things about military surplus is sometimes whenever you buy it, you get it, and you realize, oh, this isn't actually issued gear. It's just some Amazon knockoff. You don't have to worry about that at Venture Surplus. They carry some of the best and highest quality gear that has been issued to the U.S. military. And right now, if you go to their website at venturesurplus.com, use the code DCDC10, that's right, 2 DCs and a 1 and a 0, you can get 10% off everything on their site. They have all kinds of cool stuff, e-tools, bags, packs, even Whoopee hoodies. And they're constantly refreshing their stock. So if you haven't checked them out, be sure to do that. And especially if you're getting into Milsim or you just need good gear to use, Venture Surplus is a good option. And they're awesome dudes, so check them out. First of all, I had this scrim over here on the side, just in case we did end up having to store our rucks into the field, which we did not. So I didn't need that, but it's lightweight. It just went in this side pocket. Over here, let's open this up. This is one of the cool things I like about this particular pack is that you can lay it down and open up all of your contents at once. You don't have to just dig things out from the top. So I had my nods stored in here until the first time that we needed them. So whenever we went out on night raids and night missions, I put these on. The game didn't actually start till 11 p.m. So these went on my head immediately and the empty bag just went back in there. I keep a small dry bag. It's an old loophole dry bag. You've probably seen it before, with some extra socks and underwear. I didn't end up changing my underwear the whole time. I just kept the musk going on. But I did change my socks quite a bit. The weather, that's something you guys are gonna wanna check out before you go to one of these events, is what is the weather gonna be like? It was calling for a cold front the week that we went down there, but it ended up being a little bit warmer. So I did take some base layers, just some mid-level merino wool base layers. I wore them part of the time, but for the most part, I pretty much cut them off, and I had some mid-thickness wool socks and only had to change them once. I do have a sleeping system. I brought just my sleeping bag. I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't do a whole like bivvy system or anything like that. This was more than enough for camping out and living in a house for 2 days. So just a simple sleeping bag was more than enough. You don't need to go out and buy some fancy stuff, especially if you're gonna be sleeping inside. This did a great job. I did go ahead and bring the Jetboil. Now I know a lot of people just bring MREs and use like the cooking packs and the MREs. We had a couple guys on our team do that. I went ahead and went with a Jetboil because I thought it's gonna be nice to have a really hot meal, and I had a feeling that other people would need to use it, and they did. There was a lot of guys that packed food and didn't pack a way to cook it. So the fact that I had this, I was able to make life for a couple of guys on our team a little bit easier. And I have some little like utensils with a spoon and a fork connected. I actually stowed some extra stuff in here. So inside here for packing, I kept instant coffee, which is not always the best thing to have, but whenever you don't sleep at night because you're pulling fire watch or you're doing patrols all night long, it's nice to have just some hot coffee in the morning. Kept some trash bags so I could leave no trace, Boy Scouts. And then I also had some sugar packs, salt packs, and pepper packs, and some just other things to season my food because I didn't want to just go out there and like not have a good time. I ate very well. I pretty much never got hungry whenever I was out there, and it's important to remember to eat when you go on these like overnight trips. It's really easy to get in the middle of the battle and just forget to eat. I forget to eat all the time anyway, so little things like that go a long way. Plus having salt in your water is great for, you know, staying hydrated. And then the rest of it is just like little Jetboil internals. And typically what I would do is I packed a couple Mountain House meals, and I also packed a couple of broken down MREs. These were actually from old humanitarian aid MREs, so they're not the official MREs, but you can get these things from pretty much anywhere, any like Army, Navy surplus store. And I don't always like all the contents in the MRE, plus a full MRE is like big and bulky, so I just strip them down, I take out the entrees, and I brought 3 entrees and 2 Mountain House meals. And I didn't eat it all, and I was able to share a meal with somebody else who didn't have enough or who didn't pack enough. So 1, 2, and 3, and that was more than enough. And typically what I would do is I would boil water, and while I was boiling water, I would take one of these packs and I would just stuff it down in there. It would heat up the ingredients, which you can just eat these raw. It's not gonna kill you, it's just not gonna taste good. So it would heat that up. Whenever I was done, I would take that out, let it set for a couple of minutes, and then the water that was just boiled, I'd pour the instant coffee into, put a little bit of sugar in there, put a little salt in there, and I'd have a nice hot drink that was delicious. So just making use of the water as best as possible. So let's talk about water. How are you going to get water out in the field if you don't bring it yourself? Well, you can always source it. For this particular event, they did tell us that there were going to be water drop-off or water resupply points. So I didn't, for the sake of weight, because I didn't know how far we were going to be rucking, I didn't bring a lot of water with me. I pretty much took 2 water bottles, and then at different points, I hit resupply stations and filled those back up and used that to cook with and to drink with and to stay hydrated. If I were to do it again, I would definitely bring a larger water bladder just to keep filled. If I needed it, it would have cut down on those trips, but I did pretty well with what I had. So next time, and definitely if I'm out in the woods, I'm bringing a larger water bladder. I did bring snacks because anytime you're like out doing stuff, you know, you may not be back to your patrol base for 12, 13, 14 hours. So I brought a couple snacks, and I would just grab one of these out of my ruck when we were at the PB, and I'd throw it in the back of my pack, or I'd throw it in a cargo pocket. And this is just like oatmeal cookies. I also brought a ton of gummies. Because I just like, you know, if you ever notice that one of your teammates not having a good time or moving a little slow, which we did see from time to time, dudes just getting tired because they weren't eating well, toss them a packet of gummies. It makes everybody happy. So I overpacked on food. I brought too much food, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. Over here in this side panel, we have some extra clothing. I did bring a whoopee in multicam because one of the things about these events is they're very immersive. So your kit has to be, like your uniform has to match. And so I tried to bring as much multicam stuff as possible because we were on the NATO side fighting against the Russians and Chechens and some Chinese and just a big like montage of bad guys. But I did bring this basic whoopee hoodie, which was nice because at night it did get a little bit colder, and I was able to throw this on underneath my plate carrier for patrols and for pulling security in the middle of the night when you're not moving around, you're not getting hot and sweaty. It just made things a little bit more comfortable. I did bring a poncho. It didn't rain on us, but I knew that there's always a chance for rain. And so I did bring a poncho that I could throw on if I needed to. This one is in Multicam Arid, which I should have brought an actual multicam one, but glad I had it, didn't use it. If you go, you should absolutely have a poncho, especially if you're out in the field or if you're living out in the woods. It can come in handy, tons of different uses. Then on the front of this is where I kept things that could be a little bit more accessible, which, you know, we weren't rucking a lot. We basically rucked to our patrol base, which was less than a click away, and dropped off rucks and immediately went and did our first mission. But in here, I did keep some extra wet wipes for whenever I needed to take care of something out in the field or take care of something like in the house and needed to clean up. So I brought some wet wipes. I did bring a Sawyer water filter just in case the water that was there that we sourced wasn't clean. I could at least, you know, drink through this and it would be all right. I didn't end up needing it at all. And then of course, just like gummies, which was easy to like take a couple of these out, throw them in my cargo pockets, and when we're out in the field, hit up some buddies with them if I noticed they were going slow. But I can't stress enough how nice it is to have some sugar and some gummies to just kind of make your life nicer. I did bring some hot hands, some just basic cheap air activated little hot pockets. This will make a lot more sense when you look at a part of my plate carrier, but one night it was pretty cold, so especially when we were out patrolling, so I had a lot of these. The reason why I brought plenty is because they're very lightweight, they take up very little room, and I was able to give them to other guys if they needed them. I think I only used 2 packs the whole time, and honestly, I could have got away with not using them at all. Up here in this top pocket, I kept this one pretty well completely empty, so if I needed to throw something in it, or if I needed to put trash, or if I needed to put something else that I need quick access to, I could throw it up in here. But again, iPro, you're gonna want some really good ANSI rated iPro for this because you are gonna get shot in the face at one of these events. I may still lose my front tooth, but that's an episode for another time. Also brought a pair of gloves. I actually never used the gloves the whole time. If I was gonna be doing stuff out in the woods a lot, or we're having to, you know, cut down trees or dig trenches, which from what I understand can happen at some of these events, probably would have really enjoyed a nice pair of gloves, but I didn't need them. Glad I had them. Up here at the top, typically this is where I would carry stuff that I needed a little bit faster access to, but because I wasn't in my ruck all the time, I didn't really worry about that too much. I did bring a speed loader, which is a very airsofty kind of thing to bring. But the cool thing about Milsim West is that you don't just have infinite ammo. It's very resource light. So whenever you get there, you only get a certain amount of ammo, and it's issued to your squad. So if you burn through all of your ammo, you're kind of out of luck unless you can hit a supply point or you can go and capture the enemy's supplies And the enemy supplies break down into two parts. There's water, and water is used as a respawn resource and just as a pure hydration resource. So if you die and you have to go back to your patrol base, you have to chug a full bottle of water to get back into the game. So having that resource and making sure that you don't run out is very important, especially if you're trying to win or to stay in the game. Same thing with BBs, man. Because you don't have an infinite supply of ammo, you don't just have people constantly mag dumping and just, it's not one of those whoever has the best gun and the most rounds wins. It requires you to be a little bit more strategic, a little bit more thoughtful about when to use full auto and when not to. But I did have this so that we could constantly, like anytime we had a break, I could refill my BBs, refill my other dude's ammo, and so this was handy to have. The last little piece is this Vertex little stackable pouch, and inside here we had, I kept just a lot of like little weird things like tools. I did some filming at this, so we had a GoPro, a Brown Bear recorder, also had a lighter, which I never needed, but a couple of the other dudes needed, especially Steve, who smokes like a train, and some pills like Excedrin migraine, anti-diarrheal, just in case I needed them. Never needed this stuff. Some extra zip ties for gear. I brought toothbrush and toothpaste. I know that sounds like a creature comfort, but like, man, I like to have a clean mouth, and there's no way to say that without it sounding weird. But I did brush my teeth a couple times, which was nice. Just these little things that like make your life a little bit easier, that make your life a little bit more comfortable when you're out doing stuff for 40 hours straight. It goes a long way because your mind is not focused on, your mind never gets pulled away until like these, oh, my mouth is tasting nasty, or oh, my stomach's like grumbling, or oh, I'm thirsty. Like taking care of these little things goes a long way and helps you become more effective in the field and effective at doing whatever the task is at hand, and you're able to like help other people who might not have packed or prepared as well as you have. So that's the pack, man. I didn't carry a lot. You don't have to have a lot of stuff. You don't have to have an expensive pack. I saw dudes there who just had regular backpacks that were filled up, pretty heavily, but it doesn't take a lot to get into this. Just make sure that what you're packing is, smart and wise and helpful. So let's get into the kit. Airsofters not calling their hits. Solution, exothermic flamethrower. All you gotta do is flip the switch on and burn them down. Now, here's the thing. Whenever you buy a flamethrower right now from Exothermic, you can use the code ACC20 to save 20% off accessories. But really the value is in making sure people call their hits. And, well, you just get constant hit markers with this thing.
Don't shoot! Let him burn!
Sorry, Nick. Okay, so kit and gear and guns. The total weight for all the gear that I wore on my body when I actually went out into the field, like away from the patrol base, was about 38 pounds. Sounds like a lot, but I'm not a huge dude. I'm not a big bodybuilder, and even I, over the course of 40 hours, never once got tired, never once got winded. So the idea, there was this misconception going into Milsim West events that I needed to be like in the best shape ever, and I can't go until I get perfect. It's not true. Now this AO, I will say, was probably easier to move around in than a lot of other ones. I know from talking to my buddies who are cadre with Milsim West that a lot of times, sometimes they're making movements that are 1 or 2 clicks. The entire AO was less than a click and a half. So most of the movement was actually in buildings, up and down stairs, sprinting from doorway to doorway. So there wasn't a lot of really long movements. It was a lot of sprinting, stopping, and even still, like, basically nothing slowed me down. So let's take a look at this Cry JPC 2.0, how I have it set up. First of all, you'll probably notice this like little dangler here. This is just a hand warmer pouch. I thought it was gonna be super cold, so I brought this. What I actually ended up using this mostly for was to stow resources that we captured or that we found. So I would stow like BBs in here or water bottles in here and take it back to the patrol base, give it to our medic, give the ammo to the guys. So this ended up kind of being like a mini front dump pouch. And on the sides over here, this is a Tasmanian Tiger one. I don't even know if they make it anymore, but it just mollies onto the inside of this plate carrier. Over here on the sides, you do have pull tabs, so you can cinch it off and close whatever's in there. So it works, kind of doubles as a dump pouch, and it's lightweight. And there were a couple of times when I was patrolling at night, whenever it was cold, that I was able to stuff my hands in there and just stay a little bit more comfortable. That being said, I have a Spiritus Mark V chassis on here with a knockoff Airsoft little front pouch. Up in the front of here, I kept a multi-tool, which actually that's a lie. I forgot my multi-tool at home. I'll be honest, I threw this in the moment I got home because it's typically where it lives, but I left this at home and had to use a multi-tool from a friend. So good thing that we had a teammate that had this covered, because I didn't. And that's one of the cool things about this event, is that the level of player that goes to a Milsim West event, I will say, is probably more serious, or probably a higher level of participant than a lot of other Milsim organizations. Pretty much everyone that I worked with was absolutely squared away. And there were a couple of guys that weren't quite familiar with some standard SOPs, and we'll get into that in a minute about how there's some training on the front end of these events that gets everyone up to speed. You're working with dudes who know what to pack and who know what to bring, and if you fall short in any way, there's almost always someone there who's like, hey, I thought of that, here you go. And so you don't want to be that guy, so always try to think like, how can I be that guy for a teammate? And you'll usually be fine. But inevitably, you'll forget something and need some help. But that's one of the cool things about this. I also kept spare batteries. This is from Dynamic Fuzz. It's like just a little simple elastic battery holder. And I kept all the batteries for all the different things on my gear in this thing, and I didn't burn through it. I wore nods pretty much from sundown till sunup, 2 nights in a row, and I changed out my battery once just to make sure it didn't die midway through the next night. But again, didn't need any of this. Glad I had it. I did share a Sierra 123 with a teammate. I have this Juggernaut flip down panel up here because I thought I would need to run ATAC. I actually didn't need to run ATAC at all. I also didn't need to use my radio at all. And I know that sounds crazy, because at every other Milsim event that I've ever gone to, I needed to have the radio up and going, and if I didn't, there ended up being some sort of problem with me getting connected to my crew. Not at this. At this, it is so highly structured and so well put together and so well planned that your squad leader is pretty much always in contact with you and the other dudes on your team. Like, you stick together, you move together, you do things together, and you don't really ever get separated unless you die and have to just, like, walk back eventually. So I never needed to use my radio, which I think is actually a great thing. The squad leader and the RTO, they both had comms with higher up, and they would communicate everything that needed to be communicated both up and down to us, and it made life a breeze. So, and before you're like, oh, you brought a Baofeng, just so you know, all those dudes were running Baofengs, and the reason why I kept the Baofeng on my kit was so I had the same thing that everybody else had. There was no need for encrypted comms. We had Mitch there who had all the tech with him to tap into other people's comms, but the pace of the game was just so fast, we never had the chance to stop and, track someone's signal and track them down, although that would have been really cool if we did. I did bring my Hytera just in case I needed some better comms, but I didn't even need the basic stuff, so didn't need this either. Over here, actually in this top panel right here, we have, I did bring some stuff to write with, which was handy because we were given some orders, and it helped me kind of write down some things to remember. I did write down some radio freaks just in case I did have to tap into them, but never needed to do that. But this little Axle Advanced zipper system is kind of nice for just stowing some extra things in your kit. Over here on the back, I have some knockoff Airsoft back panel because, again, I use this stuff for Milsim. I don't really care too much about running the real thing. It just has some chem lights on the back, which were handy to just reach back, pull off, crack one if I needed it, or a teammate could grab it. But I pretty much kept this thing empty so that as we came across resources, we could dump some things back there. Could carry a couple of extra water bottles, could carry extra ammo, could carry extra grenades. If somebody needed to shed a layer because they were just piping hot, then we could stow it in here, no big deal, but I kept this back panel pretty well empty the whole time and just filled it up and emptied it out with resources as we needed. I will say that as I added weight to this with resources that I collected, I did notice a couple of hot spots, but typically about, whatever this weighs, it doesn't bother me at all. So, but that's one of the cool things about these events is like, man, you get to really shake out what works and what doesn't. When you're living in something and even sleeping in stuff for 40 hours straight, you find out what you do and you don't like about your kit way faster. It's one thing to wear your plate carrier for a whole day on the range. That can highlight some issues with your kit. But when you do it for 40 hours straight, it takes it to a whole new level. So that's one of the big reasons why you should go to one of these events so you can really shake it out. Or just go spend 40 hours out in the woods by yourself. It's a little bit more boring. You're not getting to shoot people, but at least you do get to figure out, how does this ride on me? Belts. I'm actually not a real big fan of running belts in events like this. I don't run a pistol on it because I notice that gets snagged on stuff all the time, especially going out into the woods or trying to navigate through really tight hallways. And there were a lot of little underground subterranean tunnels that we went through, and staying as thin as possible definitely helped. But for the belt, I ran the new Bear Solutions Vostek, I think is how you pronounce it, or Wojtek, however you say it. And this thing has been awesome. I really loved it. This is the first time I used it out in the field, and it held up great. Didn't cause any issues with the hips. And as I'm getting older, my knees and hips are the first things to start hurting. So the fact that they didn't says a lot about this belt. Did keep a medical pack in the back. That was never used, obviously. Dump pouch, I used a lot. And then I don't know who makes this. It may be Spiritus. I can't remember, but I use this primarily for grenades and smoke grenades and just kind of fast access to some tools that I could use if I needed to. Have a Coyote Tactical Systems magazine pouch over here on the side, and that's about it. I kept it pretty clean. I saw a bunch of dudes running pistols. I rarely saw them get used, and I didn't need it, so I didn't bring it. The helmet you guys have probably seen before. This is a M-Tech Strike with my full setup. In the back, I ran an external battery charger for a counterweight for my nods. I ran nods more at this event than I think I ever have in the past. In other words, I ran it consistently the whole time, even day noodles. So that makes a difference in terms of the weight that's on your head constantly. I got a little bit more neck fatigue than I normally would, but for the most part, it was great. I did make sure to cover up my caps because, again, day noodles is trying to protect my investment. But this was great, and I found an awesome use for the Sidewinder. We did use our red lights quite a bit at night. Whenever it was safe to use, but at one point I was able to just strip this thing off and use it as a handheld because the handheld that I had was actually too powerful and I didn't want it to shine and spill everywhere. So just has a nice little red light on it, and then I could just slide it back on. No big deal.
Hey, you gonna do this read for Allegiance Gold?
I don't have the energy for you today. Guys, Allegiance Gold, if you go to protectwithdc.com right now, you can earn up to $5,000 of silver on qualifying purchases. And gold's a great investment. It stood the test of time, and it's never a great idea to have all of your assets wrapped up in the volatile US dollar because, we all know what inflation's doing right now to our country. So again, that's protectwithdc.com. Get set up with some gold, and we all have time for that. Where are my cattle? Okay, so for the airsoft gun, I wouldn't normally talk about this, but we do get tons of questions like, hey, what kind of gun do you have? And I get it. I was there on a team with guys that had really fancy airsoft guns. I was there with Mitch, who had a $200 gun and who couldn't hit anything. So this is a Virtus MCX that's been kind of tuned by Airsoft Barracks. I love this thing. It never messed up the entire time. I never had to do a battery swap. I did charge my batteries ahead of time. And this thing just ripped all weekend long. I can't count how many full auto strings I put into dudes that didn't call their hits. But it was great. So I had this set up pretty well just the same as I do my normal like 11.5 LMT. I left the stock at this distance because or about this length, because it makes the overall length about the same as my normal gun. But again, just an EOTech with a magnifier. I did use the magnifier a couple times for a better PID, which was very challenging. At night, I pretty much always had to use a white light to PID because you can't tell who's who under thermal and nods. And we did have 2 guys with thermal on our team to spot enemies. And then we would offset with our white lights. One person would hit them with a white light just to see what color their uniform is, and then everyone could unload on them. So we'll demonstrate that at a later time. But I have my CQBL1 Key-G combo on here with a mod light dual lead, and this thing was an absolute beater. I won't talk too much more about it, but it was great. Make sure you invest in a good tool to shoot people with. Okay, so that's the kit, but honestly the coolest thing about Milsim West was the actual experience. We got there at about 2 p.m. and we didn't step off until about 11 p.m. So what happened in that middle ground? Well, you find your unit, you find your squad, you get together and you actually get in formation. But one of the cool things that I saw happen that I did not expect whatsoever was the fact that the cadre put on some training classes for the people that were going to the event. So when we got there, it was basically like, hey, how many of you guys have ever done CQB stuff before? And a lot of people raised their hands, but a lot of people didn't. So the cadre actually put on some very base level CQB courses for all the players that were there. They took them into buildings, taught them the difference between a corner fed and a center fed, talked to them about what an LDA is, a linear danger area, how to cross it if you have a full squad behind you. They took the time to talk through the basics so that some of these players that didn't understand that stuff could fall in with the guys that did and understand their SOPs and move fluidly with them. And we had a couple of dudes in our squad that, for the most part, all of us dudes were pretty well spun up on the basics, and we all knew how to move without talking, or how to communicate without talking, how to move through a structure. There were a couple of guys who didn't quite know all that stuff, but after that quick little training session, man, they were absolute studs with us the entire weekend. They took a short class, they stayed in the back, watched us do it, and by the end of the week, or by the end of the weekend, they were moving and flowing, and it was great. Not something I expected to see at an Airsoft event, and that's why Milsim West is not an Airsoft event. The next thing that we did was actually plan out what we were going to do. So some of our leaders, some of the cadre, and some of our platoon and squad leaders built a terrain model in this area, and we as a squad and as a platoon stood around it, and they explained where the different structures were, where we would be going, where we were going to drop off our rucks at, establish patrol bases at, establish observation posts at, the first couple of buildings that we intended to take, and where we would stage to send out raiding parties throughout the night. So the fact that there was that amount of time and strategy and the communication to all the players went a really long way into making sure that everyone had an understanding of what they were supposed to be doing, who they were supposed to be doing it with, and where they were supposed to be going. It just made things a lot simpler, a lot cleaner, and it made it awesome. Once everyone knew the plan, we all got in formation by platoon and by squads, literally lined up, and we were told, hey, squad 1, you're going out first, then 2, then 3, then 4, and you already know where you're going because we just talked about in the terrain model. As soon as you get there, dump your rucks, and you're going to keep on going and take this building that was like a center point. For us, it was a hospital. We had to go in through the first floor, clear all 3 floors, and then from there, we could stage to send out raids throughout the night. Now, our particular squad, 1-1, our main job, for the most part, was to pretty much disrupt and demoralize the enemy. That was the objective of most of our raiding parties. And one of the cool things about Milsim West is that you don't always get at other events. I'm not saying like other events aren't as good, they're just different. You know, sometimes whenever I go to these Milsim events, our team may know exactly what we're doing, and we could go and we could take a building, but if we left that building to go, you know, raid the enemy or to go kill the enemy at another location, it's not uncommon for the squad behind you to not move up and secure the position that you just left. And so inevitably the enemy just kind of flanks and comes right back in behind you and shoots you in the back. And it's like, what did I do all this work for? That doesn't happen so much, or at least it didn't happen to me at Milsim West. At Milsim West, I always felt like the other squads understood how to provide security and how to set my squad up for success. And I always kept that in mind. Like, it seemed like our team kept that in mind too. Like, hey, how do we supplement what they're doing to give them a better vantage point or to give them better security? And the cadre and the squad leaders did a great job of communicating to one another to coordinate these movements and these efforts. So you're really moving as like one giant organism and not just like, you know, running out into the wild and getting shot and killed from behind. So that was something significantly different about this event that I went to that I've not experienced before, and it was awesome, and it made all the difference. Now, one of the really cool things that we did was we did have Steve Winiger on our team, who used to actually train at Muscatatuk all the time for SWAT, and so he kind of had an understanding of the AO a lot better than most people, and he knew about this underground subterranean tunnel system that can take us underneath the enemy up into their different buildings. And so we took that tunnel a lot, very quietly, very silently, no one making a sound, moving as slow as we possibly could so that no one could hear anything. And we came up underneath guys all the time in their buildings, shot them in their sleep. We don't shoot anybody in the face in their sleep, but dudes in sleeping bags did get shot in their sleep, and it was freaking sick. So we would just show up, a squad of 8 dudes, and shoot a bunch of people, throw a couple of nades, then dip out. And what that did to the enemy was, well, they didn't know how many people they were fighting. They could have thought they were fighting 40, 50 dudes who were just all of a sudden in their patrol base or all of a sudden in their building. So it woke them up in the middle of the night. All their eyes had to go on this area. They started shooting like crazy, wasting all their BBs, which is, you know, a finite resource, and throwing grenades, which is another finite resource. And all in the middle of the night, whenever we could just dip in, do that, and dip out. And so wasting the enemy's resources in that regard was pretty awesome, because it was just 8 dudes in a building with like all the enemies. So it was pretty cool. You won't get a lot of sleep at these events. I did see some guys get plenty of sleep, and they didn't really do much else. But for the most part, everyone's pulling security throughout the night. And when we actually come back to our patrol base after like raids at like, you know, it's like 5 a.m., the sun's starting to come up, people have to get some sleep in or some naps in. Our squad leader, Justin, absolute stud, he scheduled us all. So we had 30 minutes, pairs of 2 for 30 minutes. We'd patrol, we'd come back in, we'd get to sleep for an hour before our next shift. And so, you know, you're kind of working with, you know, if you have a squad of 6 to 8 dudes, if you had, you know, more people, like 20, 30, 40 people, you could spread that out a lot more and people would get more sleep. But for us, we got about an hour of sleep at a time, probably about 3 hours of sleep a night total, maybe, which does make things a little bit weird. So if you've never, if you don't have kids, and if you've never gone on one of these events, you may not know how well you function on very little sleep. I have 3 children, so I know exactly what it's like. And this event was not hard for me at all because this was nothing compared to a toddler or compared to an infant in the middle of the night. But for a lot of guys, it can be hard, and I would just say, hey, come to it, try it. You may actually perform better than you think. And it is interesting to see what kind of falls off in terms of your mental fortitude when you have no sleep whatsoever. So it was cool. I enjoyed doing patrols in the middle of the night, pulling security. And we did get raided a couple of times at like 6 a.m. when the enemy knew that we had been out raiding all night. They would try and attack our patrol base at like 6 or 7 in the morning when the sun's coming up. Even though it's broad daylight, they knew we were at our worst in terms of sleep. And luckily we repelled them because we had good security.
He's in no kit! Ryan got him and he's in no kit and he's just slaying dudes! Okay. I guess I better go down there and help them.
So it may sound like I'm raving about Milsim West, and you know, maybe I just have that kind of like that beginner love for it. You should know I wasn't paid to be there. I didn't get a free ticket. I paid like everybody else. I went through the same process that everybody else went through. And I genuinely love the experience. It was at an inconvenient time in my life right now, but at the beginning of the year when we did that first Airsoft video, I had my buddies Kenny, who's cadre with Milsim West, and Blue Jean Operator, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know if you're into Milsim West stuff, and they were hitting me up about, like, dude, you need to try it. It's a different beast. It's a different animal. You need to try it. It'll make you better. And I knew they were right, and so I committed to doing it before the end of the year, and I managed to hit the last one. I think this was like the last one, was like the Super Bowl event, Muscatatuk. Such a cool facility, so I'm really glad I went. I will absolutely be going to more. If you don't have a crew to roll with, because I did see guys there who just showed up as individuals, the cool part about it is that the level of player and the level of care that the cadre puts into the game makes it so you can still have a good experience even if you don't really know what's going on. Maybe you don't have a lot of skill sets built up, maybe you don't have the best gear. You can still show up and you'll be placed with a squad that has a leader that knows what he's doing for the most part. And so I would say absolutely try it. Make a goal just like I did and say, hey, in 2024, because the year 2023 is already almost over, but in 2024, I'm going to try this. I'm going to live in my kit. I'm going to take care of myself in the field. I'm going to take care of my buddies in the field, and I'm going to physically and mentally perform for 40 plus hours straight, and then assess what I need to change about my life or some things that I need to get better at. You won't regret it. You'll absolutely have a good time. That's not to say there aren't still Airsoft moments. There are. One of the coolest parts about this event is also one of the things that makes it the hardest, and that's the immersion. The Russian team of dudes were hilarious. I mean, the fact that they took the time to print out bounties for different people that they knew were going to go to the event and then like hunted them down and took pictures with their dead bodies. I mean, you don't get mad at moments like that where you get killed and a bunch of Russians run up on you and like, oh, it's Drew, or oh, it's this guy, and they take a picture with the bounty beside your head. It's just, it makes for camaraderie that spans teams. Like, you know, I love those dudes. It was awesome. At the same time, because everybody's so into it, it's really easy to get caught up in the moment. And so like player aggression, as they call it, was really high. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to do like crazy stuff, especially in CQB environments where like the stakes feel like they're really high. It's really intense. So you will still get some of that at Milsim West. Like you're still using airsoft guns. It's still a bunch of guys running around pretending to play war and shooting at each other. Like it's intense, and the feelings and the emotions ramp up high. But the important thing to remember is you're all there to have a good time. You're all there to get better. And I never saw massive fights break out or anything like that. Like it was just a good overall friendly experience, to be honest. It was friendly, and everyone was having a good time and encouraging each other. So put it on your list of goals, try it out. I try not to tell you guys what to do very often, but you absolutely should try one Milsim West event and really figure out how you stack up and where you measure up and where you fall short and where you can get better.
You're still watching? If you're still watching, you should honestly just stop and go watch some other Milsim West videos. Blue Jean Operator has an awesome channel on it. Combat Casual, who some of the footage you've seen in this video is his. He's doing a whole huge video on this event that I went to. Check him out. And yeah. And then just like turn off the videos and go do something. Oh, good.